Boxing King Media in association with Boxro out here at the Ingle Gym post AJ-Usyk. Here to grab a nice catch up with you, Dom. Just introduce the fact that you watched the fight for the first time, because normally you always say I ain't watched it.
Well, I have watched it, but what I'm going to do today is I'm going to, you know what they say, I'm going to put my thinking cap on. Now, this cap belonged to my dad, so you know he used to wear this hat all the time. So I'm going to put this thinking cap on, and we're going to have a talk about Anthony Joshua, shall we? So here we go. Look, I'm not stepping in his shoes. I'm just putting his cap on.
That's pretty remarkable. How long did your dad have that hat for?
Oh, he had it a few years. So, you know, everybody's ranting and raving about the spectacle at the end when he took the microphone and started having a bit of a rant. The only thing I'll say about that is what was wrong about that, if there was anything wrong, is that he just kind of took the play away from Usyk in his moment of glory. When he came back and did his talk after he left the ring and came back, it kind of, you could see his frustration and what he was trying to say, and basically, but he kind of said it in the wrong way, and you know, as like, oh, woe is me, when really, you know, the advancement is made from the amateur days to that level. If he'd have said after the fight, look, you know, here we are, we've put on a fantastic spectacle, you know, I've had a great career, I've come from the bottom levels of no ability, you know, no real good amateur background, and I've come to be the heavyweight champion of the world, and I've had a great moment of time when I was the reigning champion, and a guy who's been well schooled, you know, in the amateur ranks has come through and he's beat me. And just because he's a cruiserweight and he's moved to heavyweight, a lot of people are saying, well, you know, cruiserweights beat you no good. And I think AJ's kind of took it personally in the sense that, you know, he's assuming people think he's no good, and he's not no good. He's not. He's good for what he's got, for what he's started with, what he's turned into. He's done exceptionally well. What Usyk started with and turned into is not as a bigger improvement as AJ. This is what people forget. And the overriding factor is, if you take AJ out of British boxing, who is there left? AJ's retired. Tyson's retired. He can fill arenas. Kell Brook's retired. Cole Frotcher's retired. If AJ retires, who is there? Who is there to put on? Who is there to carry British boxing? There's nobody, because there's nobody coming through. There's nobody in the middle ground. So, you know, it probably wasn't a good thing him, you know, spouting it at the end, because, you know, he's held in high regard by so many people, and I think he thinks that he's not. So, you know, he's actually holding British boxing up at the minute. He's keeping the show on the road. Take him out of boxing. What is there? There's a big void. That's what there is. So, you know, it's all right slagging him off. You know, and I'm not saying when I've done interviews I'm slagging him off. I'm just pointing out mistakes he's probably making as far as his boxing. But the one thing about that fight is he did improve from the last fight. And you know what? If he actually goes for the third fight, he's actually got a chance of beating Usyk, because things were working in that fight. He had his hands high, he was blocking shots, he caught him with more body shots. He was a little bit more forceful. But the one thing he didn't do is he stood in the middle of the ring too many times instead of trying to force Usyk to the edges and trying to corner him. When he did, he was successful. When Usyk low, it was too much of it. He stood back, and who's to say it was low? Usyk said it was low. The referee never said it was low. He should have jumped on him. Tyson Fury wouldn't have hung around. Tyson Fury would have jumped on him and swarmed all over him. But AJ kind of stood back and give him the time to recover. So there's a little fault there, but I honestly believe that every time you fight somebody like Usyk, do you understand, that it will get better for AJ and not as good for Usyk. So, you know, he won again, fair play to him. But you know what I mean, Tyson Fury boxed Wilder 3 times. Why don't they make that fight again? Because realistically, what fight is going to be bigger for Usyk, and what fight's going to be bigger for Joshua? None, I don't think. I don't think any of them two fighters boxing anybody else will generate more money or more interest than that. So you might as well do it again.
Interesting point there. We're going to rewind a little bit. We're going to touch on this post-fight stuff again. When I spoke to you last week before I flew out, you predicted a very close fight. Even at one point, you kind of said AJ could do it, but then you said I predict a very close win for Usyk, and that's how it turned out. So, how did you score the fight?
You know what? It was close, and I think a lot of people had it. 8 rounds to 6 in favor. Sorry. 8 rounds to 4 in favour of Usyk. But I wouldn't have said that. I said it would be a lot closer than that. It could have been, it could have been 7-5 or whatever. But a split decision. You've got to be there in the crowd to watch it, because it's always different on TV. You've got to see what's landing. And you saw in that fight, you know, it probably was. It was a close fight, and it probably was a split decision. Everybody's got their own opinion. Everybody's looking for certain things. People looking for skill, or they're looking for power shots, or they're looking for boxing. There's lots of opinions, and I thought AJ they'll have analysed the fight. What you see with Usyk had to be on his best game against AJ the first fight because he's boxing a bigger guy. He's not boxing some faded fighter like Chisora or the other guys he's boxed. He's fighting somebody who's coming to win. So he had to come out with his best game then, and then to come out with his best game again is going to be very difficult, and he did. But AJ had adjusted and got more shots in and pressured him more. He just didn't pressure him enough, and he didn't capitalise. Sometimes when he closed him down, he was throwing combinations of shots were a bit too long, and they were kind of missing. Whereas if he just kept it simple, 2 or 3 shots what were on target, it'd have been better. But it was a close fight, and I honestly believe what Garcia did with him was obviously a Mexican trainer. He's forced, you've got to force yourself on somebody like Usyk if you're a bigger guy. You can't stand trying to dance around and box him. So, might work again, but just keep him in the corner. And like I say, he learnt from the first fight, and AJ improved tactically. He had his hands tighter when he was throwing shots. Before he was dropping his hands and throwing shots and getting caught on the counter. He deflected a lot of Usyk's shots and took the sting out of a lot of them. And he hurt Usyk again. He hurt Usyk a few times. He just didn't capitalise on it. He didn't close him down enough into the corners and keep the pressure on him. There's one time I think AJ held him a few times. Should have used that a bit more. Should have roughed him up a little bit better. And like I say, Usyk just kind of nicked it again.
So you're saying the tactics were right, and I saw some comments. People are saying no matter what they do, Usyk will always find a way of beating him. So if they fought each other 10 times, do you think it's 10-0 to Usyk?
No, I don't. I think that the more that Joshua fights him, the more he'll work him out. And I don't know what they had for the sparring, but I would have got good cruiserweight southpaws. I would have got Andrade even as a middleweight just to go in and hit AJ, and AJ just try and defend, because you're going to get a variety of. He's a very skillful fighter. You'll see the shots, and the more familiar you get with those angles from a southpaw and various styles, the more he's not going to get hurt by a lighter fighters, and he can stand there, he can learn to defend the shots. And he can then fire off, whether he hits them over the head or whatever he does. Them kind of faster guys, he's going to be more used to it. So when you get somebody like Usyk, who's a bit bigger, throwing him a little bit slower, AJ is going to be more familiar with it. And people say, "Well, a load of rubbish." That's what you got to do. You've got to use various sparring partners who bring different abilities, but all southpaw, fighters, boxers, whatever it is, get a wide range. If you ever seen, I was in America when Floyd Mayweather was having the rematch with Madonna, and Floyd Mayweather had 10 sparring partners lined up at the side of the ring. I didn't recognise any of them, and they were all waiting anxiously to get the round in because they were getting paid for the rounds. And he'd say you, and he just tucked himself into the corner. All he practiced were moving, slipping. He never even really threw shots. Maybe for the last minute of the round, and he just worked. These kids were just coming at him for 5 minutes, throwing shots at him. And the second fight, Madonna did the exact same as a sparring partner, just threw everything at Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd Mayweather was used to what was happening because he just had it for 5 or 6 rounds, for 5-minute rounds with all these varying different types of sparring partners. And that's what AJ needs to do. He needs to get very, very familiar with a variety of southpaws. And I think, the more times that AJ fights him, I do believe if he fights him the next time, there is a very, very good chance, if he can keep motivated, because as you can see after the fight, there's a lot of fire in his belly. He was so disappointed with himself because he probably did the best he could do in training. He probably pushed himself more than he ever could. He really, really wanted to, right the wrong type of thing as the first fight. And that's probably why he was so frustrated, thinking, well, I've done everything right, how come I haven't beat him? But I do believe if he fights him again, it will be a very, very, very close fight, and a possibility that AJ can beat him.
Interesting. And you agree Robert Garcia was the man, and you believe he should stick with him going forward?
I think, it wasn't rocket science what he had to do with AJ. It wasn't rocket science at all. I can't see, I don't know somebody, whether they were taking it in turns or there was too many people talking, but, he's an experienced trainer. He's a Mexican trainer. He knows that he sends his fighters forward. It's not rocket science. Them guys who are moving around, you've got to close them down with body shots. You've got to stop them being effective. You've got to get them in the corners. You've got to keep them close to the ropes. You can't be stood in the middle of the ring giving them space to move around you. You've got to close it down quicker. And maybe that's what he told AJ, but he's getting AJ to implement that, and he did at times. But then there were times when he let him slip past him. So, if he goes with that again, he's got to try and implement it better. And I think Usyk will think, oh, not again. I've got to fight him again, have I? And I think he will learn, because he did learn. He did learn. Usyk didn't really learn anything different from fighting Joshua. He did the same thing, but Joshua did learn stuff and did implement stuff. He had his hands higher. You know what I mean? He kind of did a lot more body swerving, a lot more feints with his body, deflected shots. And when he was leading off with the hooks, instead of having his hand down it and getting caught, he had his hands tight, and when he was throwing off there, he had his hands tight there. Before, he had his hands down getting caught. So they were deflecting a lot off, and Usyk found that a lot more difficult to hit him cleanly. And the same thing is, that Usyk can be hurt from Joshua's power. Whereas really, it was only when Usyk threw 3 and 4 shots and kind of caught Joshua that he had him reeling backwards. Whereas when Joshua hit him with one single shot, he did have him in trouble.
Interesting. And you said about the post-fight, you're happy that he expressed himself. Joe Gallagher, I think, has come out yesterday and said that somebody from his team should have took the microphone off him. What do you think? Did you think that was the right moment and the right thing for him to do? And obviously, he threw Usyk's belts out the ring as well.
It's a bit pantomime. It's a bit of a pantomime, isn't it? Really, and it's like he's a big guy and. He's the cash cow, and who's gonna? But that's the whole point of it. It's like. We hear Anthony Joshua saying so many times, you've got to stay humble. That's all right. It's all right saying it, but you've got to be it. And what would have been probably better is to say to him, look, fair play to this fella. I gave him my best. I'd like to fight him again. It was a good fight. I thought I'd won it. It's a sport at the end of the day. I can come again. I'm determined I'm going to beat this guy. Well done, Usyk, but, I'll see you again. And that's it, and people are, give him a round of applause. There was no point spitting his dummy out, so to speak. Obviously, the emotion's high, but he didn't need to do it, at all, because he acquitted himself very well in that fight. The thing is, he finished on his feet. After the last fight, people were saying, oh, he's going to get stopped because he looked like he was in trouble. But he didn't really look in trouble in that fight as much as he did in the first fight. So he could see there was a definite improvement. All right, not enough of an improvement to beat Usyk, but whatever he was doing was an improvement. Whereas I don't think Usyk did improve from the first fight, if you know what I mean. So if he went for it again, if he can motivate himself enough again and keep making changes, positive changes, there is a possibility. Why not have a trilogy like Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder? Why not?
There was a moment where at the end of the fight, AJ held up Usyk's the Ukraine flag with Usyk, and then they had a conversation where Usyk said to AJ that you're strong, and AJ said, but you've got the skills, and he goes, being strong doesn't win you fights, but having the skills does.
Yeah, being strong does win your fights, but it's been, it does win your fights if you know how to use it to its full extent. Do you understand? It does, and basically, it's not going to be possible because AJ is too big. But you look at people like Mike Tyson, how he took out. If you ask me in the prime who would win, Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, I'd say Mike Tyson. And people say no chance, Lennox Lewis. Yeah, I was a timekeeper at one of Lennox Lewis's fights in Hull when he boxed Steve Garber. He knocked him out in about 2 rounds or a round. But Lennox Lewis, before he went over to America, he got all the attributes of being a big guy, but the guys who were training him, he wasn't coordinated. It was very clumsy. There was nothing to it. It was a mess how he boxed. He was just physically strong. But Emmanuel Stewart honed him. He gave him the information what to do, keep the jab straight, the backhand, turn it down, all that. He kind of brought some sense to the game. Where the guys who were training, I can't even remember training before, didn't really have much of a clue. He was all over the place. He was all arms and legs and not coordinated. And it's the same. It's the same with AJ. What AJ would need to do, he'd need to be fast to execute the shots. Even just for a split second, he was just a bit too ponderous at times, trying to get into position. By the time he had, Usyk had gone. And sometimes you've got to throw yourself in hell for leather, 1 or 2 shots quickly. You know what I mean? Instead of trying to get yourself into position, ideal position, then throw the shot. You've just got to jump on it and let them go. And that's the way you're going to beat. It's got to be constant for 6 rounds. And AJ would have probably been better at keeping the pace in early. Because Usyk did start to fade. He does start to fade after about 8. And that's when AJ cashed him in the 8th and the 9th, because he had a really good 9th round. I think he had a good 8th or 9th, in the, something like, or vice versa. Same again at the end. Usyk's beginning to time, because it is hard keeping a big guy off, even if he's not particularly hitting with everything. The presence of him pushing you backwards all the time, it's a hard job keeping him off. So Joshua's got to kind of go out, be fit enough to do a good 6 rounds, and then to be able to do 6 at a decent pace when he's took the sting out of Usyk and put it on him early, when he's got the most energy, not waiting for Usyk to fade. He's got to kind of take it out of him early. So, getting back to the end of it, he just kind of, it became the AJ show, and he should have just let Usyk have his props, let him do his thing. He kind of took the play away from him, and then kind of brought it back to him as if I'm still in control here. Look, I'm all right. You beat me. I'm doing my thing, and there you go back now. But it was like almost an anticlimax by the time Usyk had. It was like, well, Usyk's won again. We all expected AJ to win. It's kind of brought. It wasn't. I only saw the back end of that. The video of the ending, and he just kind of took the shine off him. He didn't need to. The shine would have been better if AJ had given him his props and said, right, no problem, then we'll do it again. I'm sure Eddie can. It's a big money fight. You'll not get no more money than fighting me. Fight me again, and if you're that good, you'll beat me every single time. If you think you'll beat me every single time, but I'm still game for it. That's what you should have said.
Interesting points. And then the last thing I want to speak to you about is, post-fight press conference. I don't know if you've seen it. AJ, he broke down in tears, and the question was put to him by ITV. I think Antoine, his name was. He asked him, are you proud of yourself? And it seemed like the whole thing just got to him in that moment, and he broke down in tears. Have you seen that with a fighter before?
Because look, he's been to this gym, AJ. He's been to this gym. He came to spar Richard Towers, a few times, and a nice guy. And he said to me, whether he remembers or not, he went, "Have you got any advice?" I went, "Well, what advice am I going to give you? Because you've got a good trainer, Robert McCracken." I says, "All I'll say to you, AJ, is you're going to box 4 rounds, 6 rounds, 8 rounds." I says, "Kids are varying ability. You're going to win all them fights." I says, "But if you're boxing a 4-rounder, for 3 rounds, learn how to box the guys, then knock them out in the 4th. If you're boxing a 6-rounder, box them for 5, knock them out in the 6th. Boxing an 8, box them for 7, knock them out in 8. He didn't take the advice because he just knocked everybody out in the 1st round. What are you learning apart from learning how to knock somebody out? You're not learning how to control somebody in that ring. It was always going to be in his first 10 fights, or whatever it was. They're going to be kids he's going to beat. They're going to give him a bit of a test, but he's going to overpower them. But control them with the boxing. Because if you're in a fight and you try to knock somebody out and you can't knock them out, you've got to go back to boxing, and that's hard. And he found that out when he boxed Dillian White. They both had a shootout. It was only because AJ took us off a step back and thought, wait a minute, we're both getting wobbled here. And he went back to boxing, whereas Dillian White didn't, and he got him. But that lesson should have been learnt fights before. And it's only now, that early part of his career, AJ's career, is catching him up with him in the bigger fights. And that's where the mistake's been made. And it's very, very difficult, once you've gone to that top level, to take your steps backwards and relearn what you should have learned 2 or 3 years ago, how to control an opponent in the ring before taking him out. Being confident that you can do that no matter how hard it is. Look at Tyson Fury when he boxed the Irish guy. Martin Rogan, or boxed one guy? He boxing completely southpaw. He put himself at a disadvantage. He's not a southpaw fighter, Tyson. He can switch, but he put himself at a disadvantage to practice the fight. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to make the fight difficult but controllable, and give yourself questions to answer and problems to answer when you're in a fight. And AJ did not do that in his early fights when he should have been doing it. That's what he should have done. But he's worth a fortune. He's made a fortune from where he started. At ground zero to where he's got is a bigger improvement than where Usyk started to where Usyk's got. That's a fact. Usyk was accomplished all the way through the amateurs. AJ came in quite raw, got a bit of a lift when he won the Olympics. People said that was debatable whether he should have won that gold, but he did. And it catapulted him. And then the positions when Tyson got banned, and he was out for so long, that allowed AJ to come through and capitalise on it. And then with the belts and the mandatories, they kept Tyson away for so long. Even to this day, they've never boxed. Maybe it's going to be like a Amir Khan Kell Brook fight that they're going to fight. It'd be a great fight if it did. Down the line, and barring Tyson coming out of retirement to fight Usyk or Joshua, like I'm saying again, who's gonna elevate British boxing? Because there's nobody coming through.
Do you think he showed his human side, that people have got this image of him being this big, strong guy knocking everyone out, but he broke down in tears in front of a massive press room?
And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's what That's how emotionally involved he's in the fight. You know, if he wasn't bothered, you know, he wouldn't be like that. And you've got to be bothered in this game because, you know, winning has got to be everything. You can't just do it for the money. You've got to do it because you want to win. Because when you start doing it for the money, you're in a dangerous place in them kind of fights. The heavyweight boxers, he's a heavyweight boxer. He's been the king of the world for so long, and he's still right up there. You know, he's still right up there. For me, he's still higher in my mind. He's still higher, in my opinion, than Deontay Wilder. So, you know, he's not fallen from grace at all. But I think in his mind maybe he has, and I don't know why he thinks that, because he's done a massive amount for British boxing. Along with Eddie Hearn, they've revived it, and a lot of people, a lot of fighters are calling. Look at the fighters who come behind Anthony Joshua, who've had careers behind the back of him, what he's been doing, and it gives everybody a lift. And without them type of fighters, it's very difficult to bring anybody else through.
100% agree with you. That I think I had this conversation with a few people in Saudi Arabia. We was looking around saying we're all here because of Anthony Joshua. Yeah. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. All right, not on the same scale. We go back to February. Realistically, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the biggest fight since Kell Brook and Amir Khan on Sky. You know, that's where we are. Ben Whittaker is a mile off. Miles and miles and miles and miles away from any of them fights, anywhere near that. It's going to be another 4 or 5 years before he's even touching bottom of that scale. So, you know, there's nobody coming through who's coming through. And that's the worrying thing if you're in boxing. Luckily, I've had, you know, I've been in the glory days from, you know, 30, 40 years back. I've seen it all, the Nazim Hamid, you know, the Ricky Hatton periods. We've had some great times, but you need some star in boxing to bring everybody else through. We're lacking that, and nobody's putting the time and effort in, or the promotion, to bring these fighters through. We're getting a lot of kids who are, you know, new to everybody and nobody really knows. And you know, you got people like Sam Egerton, you know, who's been around forever and a day, you know, headlining bulls in certain places, and you know, like reviving them type of kids. Who else is there? nobody.
Interesting, Dom. As always, I appreciate your time. Unless you've got anything else to add, how's the food, the Real Food book doing?
It's all doing good. Like I say, every time we come and do an interview, I get so many people messaging me. It opens up to a new audience, and there's other stuff coming out. I've been having a talk with Greg Marriott, the nutritionist. He's doing stuff, and I get so many people now who are interested on the nutrition side and the training side of it. You know, when I do an interview, I just get inundated with messages, people wanting to get in shape, and you know, thinking it's beyond impossible to do, and it's not. It's easy. It's just dedication and motivation. But times have moved on so much these days. Everybody wants everything yesterday. And getting back to Anthony Joshua, is that you think of the time and effort he's had to put in. You know, I mean, people don't see. They just see the fight. They see little clips on the promotions of the videos, but they don't see what you have to give up. What you have to give up to get into that mindset, into that physical condition. You know, Kell Brook spent 7 months training for Amir Khan. Anthony Joshua's probably been at it for 16, 20 weeks. Do you know what I mean? You've got to get over the disappointment of the first fight, mentally, emotionally, charge yourself back up again and motivate yourself to go in again. And that's what you've got to give him credit for. He's not like, you know, I remember watching Joe Bugner in the 70s against Muhammad Ali, kind of, you know, not doing his best, just getting through the fights, not going for broke. Joshua did the best he could do.
He sure did, and I hope the British public get behind him, because as we kind of pointed out in this interview, boxing is where it is at the moment because of the whole Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua partnership, and that's just been real.
Yeah, that's as real as it is. Like I'm saying to you, there's always Tyson Fury, but you know, Tyson's doing the thing of tormenting everybody. I'm coming out every time. It'd be great if he did.
I think he is, apparently.
Well, if he does, he does, and that obviously that would be a fight for Usyk. I think he beats Usyk because he knows how to control that type of fighter. I don't think it'll be easy, but he'll beat him, and that opens it up, and maybe we might get. I think no matter what, people still want to see Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury, and you know, hopefully Tyson does. He's only young. He's only 32, 33. He's not. He just seems to be been around forever, but he's not an old heavyweight. So that would be an interesting fight. I mean, after his last performance against Dillian White, you know, he was a stroll in the park. So, yeah.
Exciting times ahead. Dom, thank you as always, and we'll catch up soon again.
No problem.